gates have been destroyed.
Ready? I can smell your fear. I'm not here to bandy words.
This game's pretty cool. So a brief summary for people that haven't really played Total War in the past. It's basically take Sun Tzu's Art of War and put into an advanced game of rock, paper, scissors, where the rock, paper, scissors are the cavalry, ranged units, and infantry. With those units, you can set up formations, you can flank people, you can use the environment to your advantage, such as with force to block arrows or any other type of artillery. Then on the world map, you have to manage your empire through diplomacy and conquest, and sometimes there's, in certain games, Senate seats you have to use through managing your own internal government. It doesn't go as in-depth as, say, like a Paradox game, but I'd say it's more in terms of civilization and managing your empire. And through diplomacy, you can make trade deals, alliances, declare war, or turn other empires into vassals. You also have to manage your empire's resources, happiness, growth, and influence over your own territories. And there's also a slight RPG element to these games where you can develop your generals into these powerful warlords. They can also gain new traits and equipment through conquest, or you can make them into more so of a governor and have them specialize in making your empire the best it can be. There's also agents you can recruit, such as spies, and in this game's case, envoys and priestesses, and it depends on the scenario the game's based on, but they usually give diplomatic benefits, or they can damage an army before you attack them, things like that, or even assassinate other characters. There's also research opportunities in these games, and in this game's case, you have royal decrees that can say increase stone production by 200 or make your infantry 8% more melee damage or anything like that. There is a bit of a learning curve at first with getting used to all these mechanics and getting used to controlling your army on the battlefield, but luckily there are pause buttons so you can stop and see what's going on. But once you do learn everything, all of the Total War games are opened up to you. And if you ever do need additional help, there's tons of YouTube videos, and even inside the game itself, there's like an encyclopedia you can look in to see what something does or what something is. So there's a lot of help available to new players. Now let's look at what's new to Total War Troy that sets it apart from all the others. The economy of this game has shifted to being more resource-based, and now you have to rely on food, wood, stone, bronze, and gold. Gold doesn't carry the same weight as it did in previous titles, and now your army very heavily depends on food because everybody uses it, and your upkeep keeps growing and growing the more you have. So in this game, food is the new king. And each settlement is dedicated to one resource, so one place would produce food and another place would produce wood. And it actually adds another layer of strategic depth to this game, so you could pretty much create a monopoly, say, on food if you capture all the food places, or you can cripple an enemy by taking away some resource that they rely on. So like a true communist, you can seize the means of production, or like a true capitalist, you can create a monopoly on one resource and use it to your advantage in trade deals. Speaking of trade deals, they changed it to where it's now more based on your resources and trading one for another. There's no more blanket deals where you trade this amount of gold for this and buy whatever luxury resources you had. Oh, and by the way, there are no luxury resources in this game. Happiness is now just based on characters, taxes, buildings, any royal decrees, and events that occur. And not only do you have to appease your people, you can also appease the gods too. You can now worship gods to gain special bonuses either in battle or on the overworld map. It's kind of like in Total War Rome where you can build temples to honor a god, and like in this one you can do the same thing, and doing so will give you favor towards that god. It deteriorates over time, but you can always boost it up through a ritual, which costs a bit of food, or you can build more temples or upgrade existing ones. As your favor with the god increases, you'd get more passive bonuses in both the overworld and in battle. The benefits from doing a prayer towards a god also increases. Some gods do feel better than others on what benefits they bring, and some of them do feel situational too. Say like Poseidon, you'd probably only want to do it if you're by the sea, or if you're doing Ares, you'd do that if you're really focusing on conquest. And you're not tied down by just worshipping one god, you can do multiple at a time, so you could possibly do all of them and gain all the benefits and just really become a powerhouse. You do have to be careful with how you manage your generals too, because some of them do favor one god over another. And if you're worshipping one god that they don't like, then their motivation will decrease, and they would eventually leave your army if it gets down to a certain point. Personally, I never had a problem with a general's motivation, but I'm sure if you're managing like tons of different generals and armies, then it might become a problem, but I always stick to more specialized and focused armies. And when you do become a great and powerful empire, you might develop an antagonist that's kind of like your rival. They say it's new to this game, but in all honesty, in all the other previous titles, once you do get big and powerful, you're going to just naturally develop more enemies. So this whole antagonist thing kind of seems redundant. There's also the city of Troy, which is like the city of the entire map, but Poseidon hates the shit out of it. Like, you'd always get events of him just destroying and doing so much stuff to it. And it makes it available to conquer it, but at the same time, if Poseidon's pretty much kicking its shit in, then what's the point of even conquering it? I do have to pre-warn that my computer is a potato and it's a generation behind. It's from 2014. And in order for me to get a good performance, I did have to set all the settings down to low. So the graphics and performance you'll see would probably be a lot better on your own computer than on mine. Nonetheless, I've had better performance and load times with this game than I've had with previous Total War titles. And even with the settings on low, the game still looks gorgeous. It also uses the aesthetic of the times pretty well. It mimics the art style that you'd see on like a Greek vase or something out of the Odyssey, pretty much anything you'd think of when you think of the Greeks in terms of art. It's pretty much a literature class's wet dream when it comes to the art style. The maps and battlefields all still look good, but it's nowhere near what they did for Total War Warhammer 2. One issue I did have is that once you saw one battlefield, all the rest looks similar, but it's kind of what they had to work with because it's all one area of the world, but they could have at least done something to give it some variety. Another issue I had was with the portraits. The priestess looked very odd, and the prophet looks like he's been shell-shocked. He's definitely foreseen some shit. I tried putting my settings on high to see if it would fix the problem, but no, they still look odd. A solution I did find was just to turn the portraits to 2D. It's much better. In terms of sound, there isn't really much to talk about. It's there, it serves its purpose, nothing really stands out.
Your challenge is poor. Even your insults are pathetic. Defeat is looming. Hades has claimed the enemy hero. My skill is ruthless.
What I did like though is how they brought back the insults that the enemy generals would throw at each other, like in Three Kingdoms.
Let's see who's worthy. I don't blame you for fleeing in terror.
It's cool and fun to hear it because it brings kind of a liveliness to it. It's like, my grandma can slap a bitch better than you, or you're a sister's #1 prostitute in all of Troy. Like shit like that, it's fun to hear. Now granted, it doesn't go to that level, but it's still fun. And some of the music in this game is pretty good too. Like one of the tracks really made me pumped up and ready for battle. Like I would want to jump on the battlefield, grab my axe, and start chopping up people. It was really invigorating and it serves as like a nice hype up before a battle to really get you into it. With the gameplay, it's still the same formula that we've seen with all the other games. You got your overworld, the battles, sieges, generals, all that sort of thing. Weather can still play a role in the battle. Say if you're an attacker, you can wait a day for better conditions if it's rainy or foggy. There's also different leaders you can pick to play as, but they're all the same, just with different bonuses and how they play the game. There's already an upcoming DLC that deals with the Amazon warriors that may change some things a bit, but I doubt it. With your generals, you can level them up and give them equipment that you've gained from conquest, and you can unlock certain traits by doing certain activities, or even get negative traits from doing bad things. You can also level up your ancients, but some of the skills do seem objectively better than others in the skill tree. And skills are locked off because they are joined by pairs, so if you pick one, you can't unlock the one that's right next to it. So you do have to do a bit of planning on what you want your guy to do and what you want him to specialize in. Siege battles are still not improved from previous titles, and the AI is still a bit stupid with how it deals with them. Like, you can put 2 units by one gate and the AI would put 4 units to protect against them, even though you have a whole army coming against them on the other side of the map. And some of the fortresses do seem like they're built to have like multiple stages to the siege, but the AI never utilizes them, and it's really no point because they all put them around the gate, and that's where the bulk of the fighting would be at. With units, it's pretty basic this time around. You may have noticed that one type of unit has been missing throughout the gameplay clips. There's no basic cavalry units. Cavalry is now limited to just chariots or special recruitment units like centaurs, I'll get to that in a little bit, and generals can also equip the mount too. And there isn't really much variation in what units there are in this game, like any upgrades to a spearman is just armor or more shields. It's not anything special, it's just upgrades from those base components. So in all honesty, it feels kind of bland with how the units are made. What this game does add in though are mythical units. This game tries to bring myth into reality. So mythological things like centaurs are now based on real things, like them being horse units, or a cyclops being just a big strong guy. However, you can't recruit them normally as you would with regular units. You have to capture certain cities that allow for a production of a certain unit. It's also based on how much worship level you have with a certain god, because each one has their own special unit that you can recruit from. And the help encyclopedia was a bit misleading on this, because it worded like you can only recruit them from 2 specific spots on the map. But then I found out that there's pictures next to the settlements that tell you if you can recruit a certain mythical unit at that spot. There are also mythical agents too, like gorgons, but they expire and they're a bit expensive to hire too. So there's not much use to them, because I'd rather just get a regular agent unit, level them up, and they'll be a hell of a lot more better than wherever the mythical unit can provide me. One thing to add on is that sea battles take place on land and there are no naval fights. For experienced Total War players, you could probably skip out on this one and just stick to previous titles. But if you're a new player, this one would actually kind of be perfect to you. There's no crazy mechanics like magic that you'd find in the Warhammer games. And the unit system is more simpler because you don't have to deal with cavalry, and flanking is a bit less prevalent in this game. Then you can see if you like the gameplay, then from there branch off to another title to a historic period that you like more. So it makes great for a good introductory Total War game, but for everyone else, it's skippable.
How dare you fight me? Stop babbling and fight! Retreat! The men's spirit is broken. Enemy fighting! They will live from combat! All fall before me!